So why have these security guarantees suddenly leapt up the agenda for the international leaders? Now, if Putin is genuinely serious about bringing the war to an end, one of the things that's going to be a key part of the negotiation is land. The other one is security guarantees. Now, President Putin has been very clear so far that in any security arrangement post-war, Ukraine can't join NATO and also Ukraine must disarm. But it is worth remembering that's purely his pre-negotiation position, in the same way that President Zelenskyy has been very clear that he doesn't want to cede territory, and the West has to work out a way around it. Now, it's quite possible that during the Alaska summit that President Putin alluded to President Trump that he might be prepared to consider some sort of security guarantees. I think what's more likely is when the European leaders all got together around Washington, that they turned around and went, we've got to have a coherent line, because whatever happens, if we're going to get to a peaceful settlement, we've got to look after this part of security. Now, what form will they take? Ultimately, they have to be credible and they have to have teeth. One of the challenges that Ukraine faces is they've got at least 1,000 miles of frontline border, even more if you include the border with Belarus. And let's give an idea of the scale required for troops on the ground. If you were to put troops 60 feet apart, which doesn't appear that credible as a deterrence, you'd need 100,000 troops to man the border. Now, you've got to give them a break, so they've got to have 4 months on, 4 months off, and then 4 months training ready for deployment. So you actually need 300,000 troops to be able to man that. Where would these come from? Well, the harsh reality is, even if you use the whole of the UK army, about 30,000 deployable, that's about 10%. There's potential for France to provide another 10%, but it's pretty clear Italy wouldn't provide any. Poland is worried about its own national security, and there's no way that America wants to get itself bogged down in Ukraine. And therefore, where would the rest of these troops come from? It's just not a credible option. And besides, it would bog down NATO in Ukraine, and that would leave a green light available for people around the rest of the world. It's not the only way that you can deal with security guarantees, though. There are several others in addition to boots on the ground. One of the other options is a no-fly zone or a no maritime zone. This plays to NATO's strengths because NATO air power is an order of magnitude better than the Russians. The Russians have been badly bruised. This will be a very credible deterrent. Another way, of course, that America could get involved is around intelligence. Clearly, American intelligence is a game changer. The big advantage is that they could continue to support Ukraine, but not be overtly antagonising Russia, because Russia wouldn't know what was being provided. And likewise, logistics has also been mentioned as a way of ferrying stuff in and out of the country, potentially providing munitions and the like. This is more of an enabler than anything else. But whatever the solution is, and it's going to take a lot of negotiation, it's got to be credible and got to have teeth. The other thing that they'll be looking at is land. Of course, this land swap or whatever has been talked about, but it's all got a little bit quiet on that. And I think that's really good news, because ultimately what President Putin is probably the whole of Ukraine, but certainly the whole of this Donbas region. What President Zelenskyy wants is to liberate some of this land, and that will be the really difficult conversation. But if Russia is really serious about bringing this war to an end, ultimately he will need to have a break. His forces need a break, the equipment is tired, and his economy is on its knees. So one of the things that, if I was a military advisor to Putin at the moment, I'd be saying for the next 3 months, push hard until the end of the fighting season, until winter falls, and play all of these negotiations long, these bilateral and trilateral talks, put a few weeks between them and play it out until you get to the end of the fighting period, and hope to put yourself in a really strong negotiating position. And that's why I think there's so much effort in the international community at the moment. I'm very positive that there is at least some progress towards a peace. There's a glimmer of hope that there's progress to be made, but I have to say at the moment there's very low expectation of any significant advances anytime soon.